Hello guys and welcome to a new video. So in this video what we will do is we're gonna create something that we have already took a look at. If you remember in the first midterm, one of the questions was you get the user's name and then you would actually greet them with their initials. And that's exactly what we're gonna do today. And essentially the difference is the way we're gonna do it today is gonna be through methods. So for instance, if the user would provide Walsh University, your program is just gonna print welcome WU. Okay, so let's actually do that. So first thing first is, this is really simple. We don't need to develop an algorithm, but logically speaking, you need a scanner to take user input, and then essentially next is just gonna look, um, you know, kind of familiar after that point. So to do that, I will define a scanner object in, and now I'll get this. I already have the scanner imported, otherwise you'll get an error. So now we're gonna do this in a couple different ways. One way, which is gonna be kind of like I get the first name separate, and then I'll get the last name separate as well. And then I'm gonna show you how we can pretty much like combine them into just one string, and then I'm just gonna pass one string to my method, and then I'll be able to retrieve the initials from there. So let's do that. So it's just gonna be string f name. But before we do that, it's just to print something for the user to tell them to enter their first name, your first name, and then it's just going to be dot next, and next we're going to get their last name. L name. So now we have both first name, last name. So now we're going to actually pass these two variables into a method that's going to retrieve the initials, print them on the screen. So let's define our method here. So this method is just going to be public static. We're going to do this again in multiple ways just to make sure everybody's on the same page. The first one is just going to be void. So I'm not returning anything. I'm just going to be, having a series of print statements. So get initials. My disk is not comfortable, so I'm actually having a lot of typos. So in this case, I'll get two strings. So f name, another string l name. So this is gonna again look really simple. So if you get like Walsh University, essentially this is gonna be, but it's again, if you look into this one more time, the way we're gonna do this so far is we're getting two inputs. So each one is gonna be at index 0. So now to get that, it's just gonna be car f initial is gonna be f name. So essentially this f name dot car at 0, and so I'm to get the last name initial, it's just gonna be exactly the same, but this time just gonna be l name dot car at 0. And now this is just really simple. It's just a void, so I will just print something like welcome, and then f initial, and then another plus l initial to concatenate the two strings together. So what I need to do now, if I run it, actually you're not going to be able to see any changes because I'm not really calling the method. So before I do that, I will just actually have like first, because we're going to modify this in just a second. So let me call the method, and then with f name, l name, let's see how that would work. So Walsh University, welcome WU. So that's exactly what we wanted, which is good. Now, the way we did this, I personally don't like it so much because, again, if we look into the whole program, your program start execution in the main, so you call the method. Typically speaking now, your program will end in this method. I normally like to write programs where, the execution starts in the main and end in the main as well, which is something we're not getting in here. So what I like to do is actually something that looks like this. So I'm just going to actually copy this. And then this is going to be second. Now, instead of actually doing void, this is going to be actually string, because we're actually returning a couple different characters together. So now actually I retrieve the first name initial, the last name initial, which are both characters. The way I actually work with characters is not similar to strings. I cannot do plus for characters. It's not going to actually convert them into string, because essentially if I do, character plus character, it's going to look into the ASCII code of each character, which is an integer. And then Java is going to add these two integers together, and then it's just going to print you the sum of these two integers, which is not what you want. So essentially now what we need to do, because this method returns a string, I need to actually convert these two variables, the f initial and l initial, into string. The way you would actually do this is using the character class. So there's actually character.toString method. So this toString, if you look at this, it actually takes one character, returns a string. And then look at the description, it says takes a car object, and then it returns a string as a result. So I'm actually going to pass f initial, and then what I will do is I will actually do the same thing. So it's just going to be character.toString for l initial. So now I'm just going to actually store this in a variable called initials. Remember, this is actually now a string plus a string, so the plus now is going to do concatenation. I no longer am dealing with characters. So I converted each one individually, and then I concatenated them together. And because this method returns a string, now I need to actually return initials. So now, I haven't called this method yet, but essentially now my main method is going to call this method. This method is actually going to give the control back to the main, and then my program will end in the main method. And that's how I personally like to do it, because sometimes you would have to do it this way actually. Although for this simple example, this worked, but in most cases you would find yourself, needing to use something that looks like this. So you would need to return a string, and then this is going to be returned back to the main. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So now what I will do is I will just copy the name, and then just actually pass it the same thing. So f underscore name, l underscore name, and in this one, because this returns a string, you can actually do something like this, which I did in the last videos, and then I do sout temp. That would work, but again, I like to do it in kind of like different way, because I'm actually writing 2 lines, but I can't do the whole thing in 1 line. So I can just do sout welcome, and then in this case, like to make them like really similar, it's going to be welcome, and then I can just do this. I'm just going to copy this and then pass, or actually call the method directly from the print line. So I can actually comment this because it's no longer needed. So now I'm actually calling the two methods. I should get similar result because I'm passing the same data and the two methods do exactly the same thing. But you get the point. One time, this actually gave control to the method. The method actually just concluded with whatever it needed to do, versus this method over here, which brought control to this method. The method did what's supposed to do and then actually give the control back to the main. And then we actually print it inside of the main, not inside of the method. So let's see that. Hopefully it's going to work. So these two do exactly the same thing. So that's good. Okay, so now we're just going to look into one last case where, so notice now we're passing the first name and then the last name separately. What if I want the user to pass just their full name, and then our method is just going to be able to figure out the first name initial and then the last name initial, and then actually pass them back to the main. So I'm just actually going to keep them that way. So for now, before actually I call the methods, what I will do is I will define full name, which is going to be fname plus lname. So remember, this is actually concatenation because I have two strings. I'm actually adding them together. But now if I do this, if I actually do sout full name is full name, so you can see what we need to change. Full name is, like Walsh University, there's no spaces. So actually I need to add the space so actually I can get my string to work. So I actually need to do plus space plus lname. So now if you see the difference, like Walsh University, you can see now my full name is exactly what I wanted. And I no longer need to print this out. But now we're just going to actually write another method. The method is going to take one argument, and then that argument should be able to retrieve the first name initial and last name initial. So again, it's just going to be public static. It still returns a string, and then get initials. A third method, it takes the full name now. Now, how would we able, I don't know, I'm really not typing well tonight. So now the way we're going to do this is, again, consider you have a string like Walsh University. This should be really easy because it's going to be at index 0. Now this one is not really as straightforward because obviously I really don't know the length of my string. The first name character, like the first name initial is always at index 0. This one is going to be really variable. But I can actually look at this from a different way where I'm just going to actually iterate it through my string, and then whenever I encounter a white space, I'm just going to take the next character to the white space, and that's going to be my last name initial. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So now if I do full name dot char at 0, it returns a character, so that's going to be char f initial. So now we're taking care of first name initial. Now for last name initial, it's going to actually do a for loop, which is actually very much related to maybe a couple videos back. So it's just going to be for int I equals 0. I is going to be less than full name. It's actually this string dot length, and then I'm just going to actually increment I every single time in my iteration. So now again, for each character, I want to check if that character is a white space or not. Remember, I think also it was related to one of the homeworks you guys did. recently. So the character class has a method isWhitespace, which again takes a character, it returns a boolean value. So isWhitespace, I want to check each character. So this character is going to be full name dot car at index I. So I is going to change every time, this is going to return different character because of each time, I changes. So when I is 0, full name dot car at is just going to return W in this case. And then I becomes 1. This is going to return A, L, SH, so on and so forth. So now, in this case, once we return the character, we're going to check if that character is white space or not. So now, we're just going to actually have an if statement. So we need to check if character is white space or not. So that's going to be if it's true, only if it's true. In this case, it's just going to be at this case, I want to actually get the last name character. So it's just going to be car or last name initial. It's going to be full name. I'm not really typing well. I think, so actually we get the initial, and remember this is actually a for loop. If I get there, I can iterate it. I can actually end it. I don't need to continue iteration. But look here, I'm not really interested in getting the character. I'm interested in getting the next character, so it's going to be I plus 1. And then I can actually break. So once I break, I exit out of the for loop. So this method returns a string, which means I need to get this character as well, obviously convert them into a string, and essentially return these two characters as one string. So pretty much that's going to look exactly like this. So I'm just going to copy that. If initial, L initial. Now the problem here is if you look into it, it says L initial cannot be resolved to a variable. The reason is in Java, like the compiler doesn't know if your string will always have white spaces, which means that in some cases this variable might not be initialized at all. So in order to resolve this, what you need to do is actually let's like define it up here. So no matter what, it's going to be defined. So it's going to be car. And then to make it really simple, like define something like a star in it. So it's something like, it's not a common character. And then remove the definition here. And once we did this, we need to return initials, right? So now what I need to do, oops, I think and then I think return initials, right? Yeah, I think now what we need to do is just call the method from our main, and then like call the method with one string, which is like the full name in this case, and then full name. And actually, you can, like I like to do it again, as out welcome, and then this is gonna return then let's just have like a separator so we know where we are. So let's run this. Walsh University, and there you go. So you see now we did the same thing pretty much in 3 different ways. One way it was through a void, so we did not really return any data back to the main. And in the second way, we actually returned a string, but our method took 2 different parameters. And in the third way, we just passed one parameter and our method returned a string for our main, and then we printed that down here in the main. Hope that was helpful to you guys. If you have questions, please let me know. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.